Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call a meeting of the Lowell City Council to order. Please join me in the council prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please join me now in honoring America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome our acting city clerk, Brian Leahy, to the meeting this evening and ask Mr. Leahy to call the roll, please.
Mayor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercier. 7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm requesting a moment of silence with darkened chambers for Lowell Police Officer Charles Panic, a loving son, brother, uncle, colleague, neighbor, and friend. Officer Panic served his country with pride and distinction in Iraq and Afghanistan, and was a decorated veteran of our country and of the Lowell Police Department. Officer Panic's wake will be Thursday from 2 to 8 at the Pelham Funeral Home, Pelham, New Hampshire. His funeral mass will be held at St. Patrick's Church in Pelham, New Hampshire at 11 a.m. on Friday. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. Anyone else? May we all rise now in a moment of silence in darkened chambers. Thank you. May he rest in peace. If I could ask my colleagues, the first item on the agenda, the minutes of the July 12th meeting for acceptance. I actually don't have those minutes this evening, so if we could put those off to the meeting of August 9th. So moved by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed to vote. Thank you. Under communications from the city manager, responses to council motions and requests. Do you have any comments, questions? Councilor Mendonça?
Yes, I appreciate the report of unaccepted streets. We now have a list of exactly what those streets are, and we have a list of streets that are in progress for being accepted. I appreciate having that. It was quite an extensive list. Of course, we knew that since nearly half our streets are unaccepted. I was just wondering through the mayor to the city manager if the manager had an estimate of, at the current pace, how many years might it take to get through this list, assuming nothing is added to it.
Mr. Manager?
I hopefully can assure you that nothing will be added to it. And I guess the short answer is I don't have an exact number, except to say a very lengthy period of time, many years.
Many years.
As you know, the City Council approved within the capital budget this year some money for street paving, which we included in the capital plan, in part to do some paving, but in large part to do the necessary engineering and survey work to bring these streets into a status that they could be accepted. We're looking to identify other sources of funds that we may be able to also put towards this. Of course, the problem is putting all the money into surveying and engineering certainly is helpful long-term for us in terms of increasing the amount of Chapter 90 money we receive, but it doesn't do much for us in terms of dealing with the problems that these streets have. I actually asked the city engineer just last week to start to put some numbers together for me, or a map of what streets we might be able to get off and do some paving work if, with non-Chapter 90 money, assuming some funds were available. And it's really very discouraging to look at the map that she's then able to generate with the small amount of money that I think we might be able to put towards this, to see how little is actually done. So I really don't have an answer for you, Counselor, on that, but I really think, suffice to say, it's going to be a very large undertaking to go from under this hole that we're in with regards to the unaccepted streets.
Yeah, just because a large number, I was pretty sure it'd be well over 5 years, and it probably maybe 10, but I think we need to have some schedule to whittle it down so that within a reasonable amount of time, we have a very small percentage of this left.
Yeah, it could be as much as 20 years before we, without putting a tremendous burden on the taxpayers of the city. But I'll ask the city's engineer to do some work and come up with an answer on that for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I at least appreciate having the list now, so thank you very much.
Council Martin, then Council Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, appreciate the effort that's gone into this report, Mr. Manager. And, I did bring this up in the past. I brought up at the budget hearing, not as a means of criticism, but as kind of to highlight the task ahead. And, at least the kind of short list where work is underway, those, at least to me, appear to be fairly recent new subdivision roads. I say recent, could go back as much as 20 or 30 years, but, the city's been here 175 years. And if you look at the other longer list, I mean, some of those streets have existed for decades in the city. And I think it's a little bit burdensome, to say the least, to think that we're going to have to need survey work on all of these to accept. I mean, I wonder if we're the only municipality in this situation, and whether there's a solution legislatively or otherwise where we could be relieved of the necessity of doing, field survey work for each and every one of these. Seems to me there might be a better solution than, trying to do 5 a year when you have, hundreds to do. So I just make that by way of comment as if there's a possible solution that folks should perhaps be thinking about.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
And I do, and I think I've stated this at a prior meeting. I think every community has a certain number of unaccepted of streets that are public ways that somehow were never accepted. Some sort of find their way into being grandfathered into the Chapter 90 process, despite that fact. Others have to go through this process. I would say that the city of Lowell has a bigger problem than most communities, but certainly we can explore that, perhaps drawing upon the resources of the municipal association to see if there's some things that some other communities have done, and we will. Our city engineer does have experience outside of the city of Lowell, and so I'm sure, and she has quite a range of network that she can draw upon to see if, and I would think that she probably has some knowledge on that already, but we'll certainly follow up and get a report on that.
Thank you. Council Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager. I did a quick count and just multiplied by the pages. It's about 560, I think, in the black and white sheets alone. Is there a way to determine, say we did 10 this year, and that increases Chapter 90 money in some fashion, as you're going forward and with the engineer and Tom and whoever, Mr. Moses and whoever, you try and formulate a way to, step up the pace or make it more of a focus, is to maybe use some of the extra money we get from getting these streets accepted In other words, if it increases our Chapter 90 money, maybe half of it goes towards some repairs on those streets and half goes towards, increasing our budget to getting more accepted. Does that make
Unfortunately, that would be the case of using Chapter 90 money essentially on unaccepted streets to make them accepted. So that would be the problem we would run into there. That's why it's necessary to put some of the capital money in. Again, I think that we wanted to get this report to the council, and we wanted to start to chip away at these, and this is what the city engineer's office has been doing the last year or two, that we've been at this, and maybe going back a little bit longer since Lisa came on. But we can certainly explore some other
maybe it's a way to
possibilities.
reduce the non-Chapter 90 money and to kind of offset what we increase in Chapter 90.
Which is why we tried to use the the non-Chapter 90 money this year that we appropriated to make the streets, rather than paving streets, a few streets put the money towards making more Chapter 90 eligible.
Okay. I think we're on the same page, and I appreciate the hard work. I know this was not an easy list to come up with, and it's going back years and decades in some cases. Some of these streets, it's amazing they haven't been accepted, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just to change the subject, Mr. Manager, we received a report from City Engineer Lisa DeMayo about the cobblestones at Central, Middlesex Street, and the work on that's going to start August 1st.
That's correct.
And Warren Street is also going to be part of that
That's correct.
reconstruction? It says a motion by Councilor Caulfield, but Councilor Mendonça should be applauded for bringing it in probably 8 to 10 months before me. And it's an issue that has to be addressed. It's disgraceful to have cars come into that. It's a main thoroughfare in and out of the city, so I'm looking forward to August 1st.
Yes, well, if I may, Councilor, thank you. You are correct. Councilor Mendonça raised this issue some months ago, and we responded to that we were looking to, there was an issue that was on our radar as well. We were looking at some other funding sources that we thought we could put towards that were not available, that ended up not being available, but it was a priority of ours, as clearly it was of the council. And when the extra Chapter 90 money became available this year, we started moving in that direction, and Council, you raised the question of the status of that, and so that's why it was, but it's really its response to both councilors.
I know the motorists who use that intersection every day will be happy to hear that's going to be addressed.
Thank you. Anything, Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received a response to the motion I made regarding placard parking on Beacon Street, and as I suspected, I knew it would be a comprehensive report or approach to the residential parking. There are a number of, and it was very well done, by the way, Mr. Manager and Mr. Bakey. We've had this issue before us a number of times. It does suggest some opportunities to address the reserved parking space. I'm not sure what the best approach is, but there's a couple that I personally think are a good idea to address people getting a placard and reserving the space when they may or maybe oftentimes don't need it. So is there a preference to after analyzing this, that the administration has towards whether it's, option one? That looks like there's 3 options here. Restrict the eligibility of citywide parking only to those without off-street parking. That seems to be the problem, in my opinion, unless a household has more than, the number of parking spaces. So I don't know if we should send this to the neighborhood subcommittee for a discussion and go over these options, because it's a difficult problem, and it certainly warrants more of a discussion than here tonight.
Okay. Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Motion by
Councilor
Councilor Elliott.
to add, Mr. Manager?
I was going to actually suggest that, so I agree completely. I think a full discussion of all of the issues regarding that makes sense of doing it at a subcommittee.
All right.
Motion by Councilor Elliott to send the issue of the placard parking to the neighborhood subcommittee, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Anything else while we're on communications, Councilor Dakota?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just express my gratitude for the follow-up on the jobs motion, including the training information. I want to, two parts, just encourage anyone who is in the city who is interested in the Lowell jobs to sign up on the website. It does seem like we're getting more interest locally from local residents to get job information. That's great. And then secondly, I was very pleased to see the 5 points of this training. I think it'll go a long way to developing a strong culture here. So financial modules, wonderful. Performance management, I think that's great. Communication skills, one of the top skills needed to do a job well. Human resource development and leader and organizational behavior. So I see that you put a lot of effort into this, you and your team, and I appreciate that. I do have a question to you through the mayor. Thank you. It does say that one person will be selected by the department head. Will those people have an opportunity, will everyone in the department have an opportunity to apply for the training? And how will that look?
Everyone will be offered the opportunity. We'll publicize the program, give everyone the opportunity to participate. And obviously, we may run into a situation where some employees will not be able to. Only so many seats are available. So we'll make it. We haven't determined yet exactly how we'll make the final determination. Probably looking at a combination of seniority within the department. As well as an evaluation of their ongoing performance. If we see, like in a corporate structure, you essentially do some type of career planning for people, knowing which track they're on, whether they're going to move into a management position at some point in the future, and we would use those types of concepts.
Yes, thank you. Just to reiterate, I think it's a great program and it'll help us retain and attract really great staff people. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on communications, Councilor Elliott?
I just had one more. It was a little while ago, Mr. Manager, we received an email from you relative to the FY 2012 budget from the state, indicating presumably additional local aid. I'm wondering if they've released, I think I saw an email with revised cherry sheet figures. I wonder if you guys give us an update on the additional money that we received.
We haven't received any official word. I think some of what's going on in Boston might be watching what happens at the federal government, what impact that might have on the state budget. The understanding I have is that the state needs to close out their books, and that will happen sometime in the September-October timeframe. At that point, they'll know what type of what the financial picture looks like for fiscal year 11, which is what they're working off of to determine how much one-time money is going to be made available. The Department of Revenue has been very clear, though, in what the instructions they've already put forth, as the statute itself, the budget language itself says, that it is one-time in nature. We're looking at we began doing some sort of conceptual how we can get the most bang for that buck, and we'll provide a report to the council as that information becomes available.
So it's not in the immediate near future. They're waiting for the state to close the books. So
right.
What can we?
The way that the legislation reads is that essentially it's money that may be left over from the closeout of fiscal year 11 that will drive how much money actually becomes available. It's a combination of either 65 million or 50% of what is available after the close of the books, whichever is larger.
Okay.
And then there's a formula as to how that money gets divided, and then from that, they're going to be coming forward with advisories on the use of those funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on communications? Motion by Councilor Dakota, seconded by Councilor Elliott, to accept the communications placed on file. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Next item, we have a communication from the city manager requesting out-of-state travel. We just have one out-of-state travel request this week, excuse me. Motion, any questions? Motion by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Broderick, that we approve the request for out-of-state travel to send the Lowell Historic Board Administrator, Stephen Stoll, to attend the National Trust for Historic Preservation Annual Conference in Buffalo, October 18th to the 22nd. Roll call.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. The next vote, in City Council vote authorizing the city manager to execute license agreement between the City of Lowell and Carmen Ortiz doing business as Time Out Cafe and Eatery for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 72 Merrimack Street for the purpose of sidewalk seating. Whereas Carmen Ortiz, doing business as Time Out Cafe and Eatery, desires to use a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 72 Merrimack Street for the purpose of sidewalk seating, and whereas on May 9, 2000, an ordinance was adopted by the City Council which added Section 17-29 entitled Sidewalk Seating, establishing certain regulations for seasonal temporary sidewalk seating appurtenant and contiguous to a restaurant facility, and whereas on December 23, 2008, the City Council amended the code in Section 17-29 entitled Sidewalk Seating is now referenced as Section 243-23. And whereas the city desires to support the efforts of Carmen Ortiz, doing business as Time Out Cafe and Eatery in its endeavor to assist in stimulation of the downtown area, now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. The city manager is hereby authorized to execute a license agreement between the City of Lowell and Carmen Ortiz doing business as Time Out Cafe and Eatery for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 72 Merrimack Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. There's no objection. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to execute license agreement between the City of Lowell and Carmen Ortiz doing business as Time Out Cafe and Eatery for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 72 Merrimack Street, Lowell, for the purpose of sidewalk seating. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move approval by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. The next vote, in City Council vote, authorizing the approval and submission of the 2011 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Whereas the City of Lowell is submitting an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which, consistent with the requirements of the consolidated plan process, identifies potential impediments to fair housing compliance based on an extensive community participation process. And whereas a draft version of this plan was made available to the public for a 30-day comment period, and whereas a public hearing was also held on December 9, 2010, to hear input and gather further information for the development of this document through the distribution of a fair housing survey and several meetings with local area housing service providers, and whereas the City of Lowell must approve this plan before it is submitted to HUD, now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the proposed 2011 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice is hereby endorsed and approved to be submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development for its approval. There's no objection. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the approval and submission of the 2011 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Move approval by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Any discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, on the report that we received from Mr. Baker, it indicates that we do not need a fair housing commission based upon all the other organizations in the community. So if someone does have a complaint, where do they go to? One of these organizations, or, and I just cite and I agree, given the strong network of nonprofit service providers in Lowell, you know, there's really probably not a need for this Fair Housing Commission. It also indicates, so that's my first question. The second one is FHCGB has expressed an interest in locating a satellite office in Lowell as well. Okay.
I would ask that Mr. Bakey provide the information on that, since his office provided.
I just want more of an explanation. I'm not looking to,
Good evening, folks. The analysis of impediments to fair housing did identify that the city would benefit from additional fair housing outreach, education, and enforcement activities. And we've been in discussions with the Fair Housing Center of Greater Boston that serves this region, although they don't have an office presence here in Lowell. They're actually, they've put in some applications for grants to try to extend their reach up here to Lowell. In the interim, there are a number of nonprofit agencies in the community that are familiar with fair housing issues and can assist people with fair housing issues, ranging from some of the legal aid agencies to community teamwork and some of the other housing placement agencies that can assist people. And our office is also happy to assist people if they do feel that they've run into some issues. When it comes to actually more aggressive enforcement issues, the state also has a commission that deals with discrimination issues, and they do process complaints regarding fair housing for the entire Commonwealth, not just for the city. The idea of a commission seems like that would probably not be the most effective tool for addressing what does appear to be a need. And in fact, getting the Fair Housing Center of Greater Boston to have a greater presence in the area would probably be a much more effective tool for addressing what was the identified need. I think the good news with respect to this document, this is a document that we complete every 5 years as part of our obligations to when we accept block grant funds from the federal government under the various HUD programs. And the good news is that over the years, in our outreach into the community and the nonprofit agencies that deal in this arena have actually basically found that there are fewer and fewer circumstances relating to housing discrimination in the city of Lowell. We've been particularly impressed with groups like the Landlords Association and others that they've really taken it upon themselves to educate their members and really make sure that they do everything they can to minimize discrimination. And so we really appreciate the role of a lot of folks in the community to helping to reduce the incidences of housing discrimination and the likelihood of housing discrimination in the city.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Council Martin?
Well, I just note, there was a public hearing held on this. 4 people attended and commented. So I think that speaks, well, I guess either to the fact people didn't know about the hearing, but I suspect if we had a real problem here, the doors would have been beaten down, and we'd have a lot more participation at the public hearing, either by individuals or advocacy groups. And so I think the DPD takes its obligations here seriously. I think the Housing Authority does too, and so I don't see why we wouldn't proceed with the vote.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Roll call.
Mayor Milanazzo?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy? Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilor Mercier? 7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. Going back up on the agenda, it is now public hearing time. We have one public hearing scheduled for 7 p.m. Let me give the ordinance a second reading. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell entitled The Code with respect to Chapter 150 thereof entitled Fees. Any comments from the administration before I open the public hearing?
I think very briefly, the fees that we're looking to modify, and I think a couple will go up and one goes down, or and they're relatively small in nature, are to bring us in line with our neighboring communities that are all utilizing the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments to provide the sealer of weights and measures function. And this is done so that there's consistency across the board throughout the entire region. We all talk on a regular basis of the need for more regionalization of services. This is an opportunity that we see that to take advantage of a resource that we have here in the city and in the region to get a service delivered most effectively, most efficiently, and at a savings to us. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, it's these are the same fees that Tewksbury, all the cities and towns listed utilize for these devices.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The public hearing is now open for those wishing to speak in favor. For those wishing to speak in favor, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Public hearing is now open to those wishing to speak in opposition. Name and address, please.
I'm Ken Harkins. I live at 110 Bigelow Street, and I'm against outsourcing anything from this city. And I say that in all honesty because we're putting a,
That's not before us, Mr. Harkins. The fees are before us.
okay, we don't need,
Not before us. Not before us. What we have is an ordinance amending the fees.
and I'm against it.
Thank you.
I need
And
to,
you-
I should be able to tell
and-
why,
And you're recorded as being against it.
and I can't tell why.
No. You can't talk about getting into,
Okay.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. I am speaking in favor of my name is Sean Hines. I am the Sealer of Weights and Measures for the city of Lowell. I think the Sealer of Weights and Measures in this city is an important job. In good times and bad times, for probably 100 years or longer, this city has always had a sealer of weights and measures in-house to do the job. A brief description of what a sealer of weights and measures does.
Excuse me, Mr. Hines, we're talking about fees here. That's all we're talking about. There's nothing
Fees.
else before us but the amending the ordinance with respect to these fees. That's the only thing that's before us.
All right, so I'm in favor of the fees as a taxpayer being raised,
Okay?
but I am not in favor of NEMCOG.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak? I'm going to record Mr. Hines as in favor, but anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the fees at this point? In opposition? In opposition, public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council? Council Broderick, move approval by Council Broderick, second by Council Martin. Any discussion? Council Mendonça.
I think we need to adjust the fees somehow anyway. But my concern was in reading some of the analysis was that the cost of this service, at the moment at least, far outstrips any fees and revenues we receive from it. And so I am concerned going forward that remain the case, that the city taxpayers are paying for nearly half of the service. I prefer that when there are fees, that we don't make money on them, but that it's enough to pay for the service. In this instance, it's not covering our expenses for this service. I would like to see going forward, however we do it, what the fees that are brought in and what the difference might be. I do hope that we can increase our efficiency and that the fees would cover our expenses for providing this service. Otherwise, I think we would have to look at what it would take so that the fees would cover it without being onerous to the businesses involved. In any case, that was my concern when I saw the analysis versus the revenues being produced. The fee changes don't seem to me like they would increase our revenues much because one, there's some going down, some going up, could be a wash. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next year. And I think for the next budget cycle, we may have to review where it is and what it would take for it to cover its expenses.
Mr. Manager?
Counselor, I concur with the notion of making any of these services as a pay-as-you-go, putting them on a pay-as-you-go basis. We're somewhat limited here. It's a function that the state requires a municipality to provide in terms of consumer protection. It also benefits businesses in many cases. I don't think it's that unusual to have a community end up having to subsidize to some extent the service. But I'm not sure if every community necessarily recoups all of their costs of providing that service. The goal, obviously, from our standpoint, is to reduce the cost of the service as much as possible, and hence looking at alternative arrangements, and then simultaneously maximizing the devices that are inspected to bring the revenues in and get it as close as possible. And I think what we would commit to do is look at providing some periodic reports to the council in the form, I know the Councilor Elliott asks for this on a regular basis, of reports, revenue and expenditure reports, and we, the administration provides those on a quarterly basis, and we can flag that one over the next 6 to 12 months as to how we're doing in terms of those revenues.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Thank you.
Council Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I am not going to support this. I understand, Mr. Manager, that the reason the Weights and Measures employee was gone from 5 days to 1 day was there wasn't any money in the budget, is that so, to support that?
The budget that was approved by the city council in for fiscal year 2011 provided for roughly $32,000 based upon 25 hours of work per week, and without getting into all of the personnel details, which I don't think are appropriate at this time.
Well, I think you already have with this information we
Well,
received.
I'd be happy, but that wasn't.
That is
intended-
personal.
That wasn't intended for the public hearing. That was intended to bring the council up to speed on something that has been made quite public by various people in the newspaper.
Well, Mr. Manager, if we don't have money in the budget to support a full-time employee to do this task, where are you going to find the $40,000 to pay NEMCOG?
That comes out of the professional services, and we actually, I think, one of the councilors here asked that question at the last budget meeting, and we provided that answer.
Yeah. Well, I did a little investigating, and the selectmen in Billerica, Massachusetts, did not support any fee increases because they were concerned about how it would affect the economy and the business people. And you also, I know, Mr. Mayor, you're probably going to bang me out of order, but I'm going to say it anyways. Are you acknowledging receiving a letter in April from the state of Massachusetts Division of Standards?
Yes.
Saying that they did not approve of this part-time employee doing this job?
I believe, I don't have the letter right in
I do.
front. No, I know you do, Counselor. But I don't know if they said they don't approve it so much as they recommended against that, and they did not feel that it could be done on 1 day a week. I concur with that.
Well, since
I
last
agree with this.
December of 2010, 8 months,
That's correct.
for 8 months, we had a part-time employee doing this job. And that meant that the consumer, the people we represent, didn't know if they were getting a pound of green beans or a gallon of gas.
If I might, Counselor, and I think I've pointed this out in the report, the number of inspections have not changed during that period of time that we have from prior years. So it doesn't appear, and there's more information that will be forthcoming on this that's not in that report that I gave you. That report that I gave you was just to give you some data related to the sealer of weights and measures to address some of the issues that have been raised in the newspaper, because I felt the council should be given all of the information, and all that information was not being printed out in the newspaper. But there's more information that will be forthcoming on that, and I'll provide that to the council at that time.
From what I understand, Mr. Manager, the employee has worked for the city for 8 years,
Yeah, Council Caulfield, I really need to caution you.
and, well, that employee has never, ever received a letter of reprimand. There's nothing in his file.
I cannot address personnel matters at this forum, Council.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Mayor, this is defaming an employee.
Council
I'm not
Broderick.
going to support this. This is
That's fine. That's fine.
outsourcing another job of a Lowellian in this city. When's it going to stop?
Council Broderick.
Thank you. Just for some clarification, because I think things just got twisted really fast right there, or at least they did for me. The letter from the state was regarding reducing the part-time to 1 day per week?
Correct.
Did we reduce it, the position, to 1 day per week?
For the last 6 months, because that's all the money that was made available. The budget that was approved by the city council included a 25-hour-a-week position. And at the request of the employee, that was not,
Okay. But the number of inspections remained essentially the same?
that's correct.
All right. I understand the whole concept of not outsourcing, but I also understand what our constituents tell us on a regular basis is we need to find a way to cut costs. We need to find a way to deliver the services at a reduced cost to save the taxpayers. And it's unfortunate that this is what it's going to come down to over and over in this economy and the way that government in the direction the government needs to go, is that reduction is going to be somehow regionalization or some cross-training, some way, as I think the administration has done, and I think the council has pushed. I know I filed a motion, it might be a year ago now, regarding regionalization, in that we have to be able to do more with less. We want to sit here and talk about it. We want to cut money from the budget indiscriminately, maybe, but we don't want to reduce anything. And I don't think that's fair to do, and I think it's impossible to do, number one. Never mind fair, it's impossible. So, you know, I understand the circumstances that Council Caulfield's referring to here, and I don't know the particulars, and, you know, we'll get more information later. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a personnel issue. It's a Plan E violation, really, to get into it. But I think that we've given the manager the charge to go ahead and do what we can to regionalize, save the taxpayers' money, because that's what we're here for, to provide services and to do it efficiently as possible. So I don't think it's fair to say that what we're doing is eliminating another Lowellian job. You know, that's not our purpose, to fund positions. It's to deliver services and do it efficiently. You know, this is not easy stuff. So I don't think that was characterized properly, and you know, my vote to support this is not to reduce Lowellians' jobs, and I don't want it to be seen like that. But I think it's a difficult position to take, to say we have to cut where we can, consolidate where we can, and it's a reality. And look what's going on in the federal government. You know, we're spending more than we should. We have been for years. The whole country, the whole globe, everywhere. So this is a reality. This is not going to go away. We have to figure out a way to deal with it, and these are the steps we're going to have to take. And it's uncomfortable, and people suffer for it. But it's the reality we're faced with. If we don't want to do it, then we're going to end up raising taxes more. But I think we need to be clear with people at home that we either do this or we're going to be raising taxes more. So I think that, you know, we have to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the ordinance? No further, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, first, it's another fee that we're increased, which is a concern because this directly affects businesses. But secondly, what I don't understand is reducing the individual's hours and then placing the individual on unemployment. Where is the savings there? We're all about saving money. I agree, but when we're getting letters from the state saying that we're not doing what we're supposed to, we don't have enough personnel doing this, and then we put this into, this individual was placed on unemployment. I don't understand why we did one and then the other, and then we're not essentially in compliance. I understand we're all about saving money and not raising taxes. That makes all the sense in the world, and regionalization is a move that many communities are going to, but seems this just wasn't a good decision, or maybe you have an explanation on why you reduced the numbers, put it in the budget, then there wasn't enough budget, and then the individual's collecting unemployment.
Well, we lived within the $32,000 that we put in the budget for salary. It did cost us the unemployment. There was a certain amount of unemployment costs that went with that when we reduced the hours. We did save on the benefit costs. I believe the rough calculation for that entire period was approximately $10,000 savings to us for that period of time. And and again, in terms of output, the output is...
Mr. Manager, we're really going down a path here that I'm not going to allow. I didn't allow Mr. Harkins, I didn't allow Mr. Hines.
I apologize.
So I really just want to be very careful. If we want to take this up at a subsequent meeting, we can, but before us are the fee schedule. That's
Well,
it.
I understand that, Mayor, but the manager included this communication to us, which references NEMCOG, which affects the individual hours and positions. So I understand you want to rule out of order, but this is part of the public hearing as far as I'm concerned. And we should be having this discussion if one is going to have a bearing on another. Manager's saying, I'm raising the fees in order to do this. Now, the personnel issues, I'm not sure why or how they were handled that way, Mr. Manager, quite frankly. We have nobody doing inspections now, as far as I know. And presumably, if this goes through, there will be some negotiation, or I guess on the 8th you indicate that there has been an agreement reached, but nobody has been doing inspections. So that's a concern, particularly when we receive a letter from, from the state. And we didn't receive this. It'd be nice, Mr. Manager, get some of this stuff. So whether we get it through the mail or through the newspaper, I think moving forward, we should be receiving a little bit more information on items rather than reading them in the newspaper first. So then there's not this back and forth. So I understand your point, Mayor, but these issues clearly are intertwined. And I don't think we should be discussing personnel issues or matters either.
Right.
However, based upon, I think, the circumstances and the way things are being played out, it's a concern. So,
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Manager.
Perhaps I can add a little bit of clarity. The issue of who's delivering the service is irrelevant to the issue of the fees.
Councilor Elliott.
well, perhaps you're right, but the issue is that we get a letter in April saying we're not doing the inspections from the state. So then we went from there to doing no inspections. So that doesn't make any sense to me at all. So whether it's fees or not fees, whether we're raising them or not raising them, I do think it's relevant. I think it's relevant whether we are raising the permit fees or not. Now, look, Manager, you put this in the packet that said this is the reason why I'm doing it. Okay, so I think there is relevance, and I think when we make a decision on whether it's a good, sound financial policy or financial decision or not, there is some. So,
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you ask for roll call, I'd like to ask the solicitor through you. Mr. Solicitor, how many votes are required on this vote? Is a majority vote or 5 votes needed? I know it's not a 2/3 vote, but how many votes are required?
This would be 5 votes.
5 votes.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually would like to talk about the fees, right? This is a vote about the fees. It's a song about Alice.
Yes.
There are, on the chart, there's 14 fees specified, right? As I count them, there's 7 that go up, 1 goes down, and 6 stay the same. The one that goes down is the most expensive one, goes from $225 to $200. The ones that go up, one's from $75 to $100, one's from $4 to $10, one's from $15 to $35, $20 to $30. The taxi meters goes from 0 to 30, and then other things, 12 to 20. So, these are relatively minor increases for the most part. They're not all increases, and they're going to be uniform with every with the surrounding towns. So, I don't want that to be lost on the fact, that this is some, massive fee increase. These are fees for inspections that occur annually for the most part, and that are, I think in the majority of cases are going to go from $20 to $30 or from $75 to $100 or stay the same.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Martin. Any further comments? Roll call on the ordinance.
Mayor Milanazzo,
Yes.
Councilor Murphy, Councilor Broderick,
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield,
No.
Councilor Dakota,
Yes.
Councilor Elliott,
no.
Councilor Martin,
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça,
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 5 yeas, 2 noes, 2 absent.
Thank you. Next item under the city managers, going back to the city manager's agenda. In city council vote authorizing the city manager to apply for, to accept and expend a parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services for the construction of Phase 3A of the Concord River Greenway in the city of Lowell. Whereas the city of Lowell is desirous of constructing the Concord River Greenway, and whereas the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services grant will make available to the city up to $500,000 or 70% of the total project cost, and whereas the grant application requires the city match will be $214,200, which will be funded through the National Park Service. Now therefore be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the city manager be and is hereby authorized to apply for, accept, and expend a grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services of $500,000, which is 70% of the total project cost of approximately $714,200 for the purpose of constructing Phase 3A of the Concord River Greenway. The required city match will be $214,200, which will be funded through the National Park Service. Be it further voted that the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell be and is hereby authorized to execute any and all documents necessary in connection with said Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs for parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities grant. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing the city manager to apply for, to accept, and expend a parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services for the construction of Phase 3A of the Concord River Greenway in the city of Lowell. What's the wish of the council? Motion
Move
to
for
approve
approval.
by Council Caulfield, seconded by Council Mendoza. Roll call.
Mayor Melanazzo,
Yes.
Councilor Murphy, Councilor Broderick,
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield,
Yes.
Councilor Dakota,
Yes.
Councilor Elliott,
Yes.
Councilor Martin,
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza,
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. Next item, in City Council vote, declaring surplus property located at 412 Merrimack Street, Smith Baker Center, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30B, for the disposition of said parcel, namely 412 Merrimack Street, Lowell, Smith Baker Center. Whereas the city of Lowell is the owner of the property at 412 Merrimack Street, Lowell, Smith Baker Center, having acquired title thereof on September 24th, 1975, recorded at Middlesex North Registry of Deeds and certificate number 21038, book 00108, page 75. And whereas by letter dated July 21st, 2011, the city manager has recommended that the city council authorize the Department of Planning and Development to seek a proposal to purchase and to include therein a minimum proposal of $300,000. Now therefore be it voted by a 2/3 vote that the city of Lowell property at 412 Merrimack Street, Smith Baker Center, total lot area approximately 12,458 plus or minus square feet, is hereby declared surplus property and not presently needed for municipal purposes. The city manager, acting through the Department of Planning and Development, is hereby authorized to proceed with the disposition of said property under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30B, and to include therein a minimum proposal price of $300,000, and to also include required notification to all abutters pursuant to the Code of the City of Lowell, Section 60-2. Be it further voted that the request for proposal shall contain such other terms, restrictions, and conditions as the city manager deems are in the best interest of the city of Lowell. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, declaring surplus property located at 412 Merrimack Street, Smith Baker Center, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30B, for the disposition of said parcel, namely 412 Merrimack Street, Lowell, Smith Baker Center. Council Elliott.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. On the memorandum submitted, it indicates that the condition will be sold as is and with restricting the reuse on arts and entertainment. So any bidder has to, when they submit their proposal, it'll have to have something, I mean, clearly the zoning issues, but as well as have something to do with arts and entertainment.
That's
right?
correct.
Is our hope that there are some interested parties out there that that might be interested in submitting a minimum bid? That's good.
We do have a couple of parties that have indicated some interest, and this is in line with the backup information indicates, with the recommendation of the mayor's task force.
Oh,
that
yes.
was
Oh,
set
oh,
up.
no, I agree. I mean, I think this is good news, very good news, that the building is not going to sit vacant or idle. We also know that there's a significant amount of money that has to be invested, so as is and reuse, it's almost, a win-win all the way around, so that's good. I'm clearly going to support this, and good that this is going forward, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Council Caulfield and Council Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was the mayor when we formed this mayor's task force, and Mr. Mayor, you were part of that task force. I'm just concerned, the reuse. I don't see the RFP in front of me. I don't see any language. I would take it for granted that the reuse of that facility, that building, would be for a conference center, entertainment, et cetera. Is that so?
That's correct.
It wouldn't be used for condominiums, housing, or anyone else to make a dollar.
That's correct.
So it's going to be, the main use will be a conference center, a college or university,
Arts and entertainment.
an art center and so forth. Then you have my full support in that vote, because if you don't do something with the building, it's going to deteriorate until it's worthless. And it's absolutely beautiful, and I'll support this vote.
Thank you.
As long as that reuse, Mr. Clerk, you make sure that it's in the minutes, that reuse will be for conference or entertainment center.
Council Mendoza.
I concur with the comments that have already been made. Certainly, anything would be better than it being idle, and the city really doesn't have the resources to develop it. So the next best thing is to see if there's any interest out there. So I'll move approval.
Motion by Council Mendoza, seconded by Council Dakota. Any further discussion? Council Dakota.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just have a follow-up question to Mr. Caulfield's question. He did mention it cannot be used to make a dollar. Are you, through you, saying that it has to be a nonprofit?
No, it does not have to be a nonprofit.
Okay,
it
just
can be
arts and entertainment. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call on the motion.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 7 yeas, 2 absent.
The next item in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. Whereas the City of Lowell desires to make temporary rules regulating traffic under actual conditions for a period of 60 days, and whereas Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations authorizes the City Council to make such temporary rules for a period not to exceed 60 days. Now therefore be it ordered, adjudged, and decreed by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. Effective immediately for a period of 60 days thereafter, the following temporary traffic regulations shall be implemented. Section 266-55, parking for handicapped persons, elderly drop-off. Section C, in order to accommodate the needs of handicapped persons, there are hereby set aside and reserved for persons having V or HP license plates, as well as temporary handicap parking permits. The following parking spaces is hereby amended by adding the following. Dummer Street on the westerly side, beginning at a point 82 feet north of the northern curb line of Broadway, running northerly a distance of 20 feet along Dummer Street. This space is for 57 O'Brien Terrace. Second reading by title. In City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, concerning Section 266-6 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, Temporary Traffic Regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. What's the wish of the council? Council Martin?
So the agenda says 57 O'Brien Terrace, and the vote says Dummer Street,
But it's for the use of the person that lives at 57 O'Brien Terrace.
which is around the corner.
Adjacent, around the corner.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
That's correct.
Motion to approve by Council Broderick, second by Council Caulfield. Roll call.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 7 yeas, 2 absent.
Next item, in city council vote authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with ASDK Ramp Corporation doing business as Ramos Package Store to encroach upon the city of Lowell property at 77 Branch Street, Lowell. Be it voted by the city council of the city of Lowell as follows. The city manager is hereby authorized to enter into a license agreement with ASDK Ramp Corporation doing business as Ramos Package Store to encroach upon the city of Lowell property at 77 Branch Street for an overhanging awning to the extent of and more particularly described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part of this license agreement. Said license shall be predicated upon adequate insurance coverage, which coverage shall be kept in force so long as said encroachment continues under this license, and that in the event of a sale or transfer of said property, that said license shall be assignable or transferable to any successor of the license herein subject to the provisions of said license agreement. In the event that said insurance coverage shall be canceled or lapses without being renewed or replaced, then said license hereunder shall be forthwith terminated, and licensee shall have to cease and desist from said encroachment. Said license shall be in accordance with the form or substantially the form attached hereto. Second reading by title. In city council vote, authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with ASDK Ram Corporation doing business as Ramos Package Store to encroach upon City of Lowell property at 77 Branch Street, Lowell, Massachusetts.
Move for approval.
Move for approval by Council Caulfield, second by Council Broderick. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mayor Milonazo.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy. Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier. 7 yeas, 2 absent.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, appointments. We have a letter from the city manager, dear Mayor Milonazo, and members of the city council. This has to do with the Green Building Commission appointments. Pursuant to the authority vested in me as city manager, it is with pleasure that I am appointing the following persons to the Green Building Commission. Alicia Sky at 10 Warwick Street, Lowell. Joanne Souza, 1201 Westford Street, Lowell. Since confirmation by the city council is not required for these appointments, this letter is notification of such appointments. I've attached their resumes for your review. I'd be happy to answer any inquiry you may have concerning these appointments. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Accept the communication and place on file by Councilor Mendoza, seconded by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Next item is a loan order. Let me give a first reading, and this is going to be referred to a public hearing on August 9th. In City Council loan order, Lowell Regional Water Utility Upgrade Bonds to borrow $26,274,000 for the purpose of financing the costs of upgrades to the Lowell Regional Water Utility water system in the City of Lowell. It is ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell by a 2/3 vote as follows, that the sum of $26,274,000 is appropriated for upgrades to the Lowell Regional Water Utility water system, including without limitation replacement of water main and appurtenances, raw water pump station improvements, treatment plant improvements, including installation of photovoltaic panels and lagoon rehabilitation, improvements and/or new construction of booster pump stations, and residential meter replacement, including all engineering and design costs related to such projects, and including without limitation all costs thereof as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 29C of the general laws, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the city manager, is authorized to borrow $26,274,000 and issue bonds or notes therefore under Chapter 44 and/or Chapter 29C of the general laws or any other enabling authority, that such bonds or notes shall be general obligations of the city unless the treasurer, with the approval of the city manager, determines that they should be issued as limited obligations and may be secured by local system revenues as defined by Section 1 of Chapter 29C. That the treasurer, with the approval of the city manager, is authorized to borrow all or a portion of such amount for the Massachusetts Water Pollution Abatement Trust established pursuant to Chapter 29C and in connection thereto, to enter into a loan agreement and/or security agreement with the trust, and otherwise to contract with the trust and the Department of Environmental Protection with respect to such loan, and for any federal or state aid available for the project or for the financing thereof, that the city manager is authorized to enter into a project regulatory agreement with the Department of Environmental Protection to expend all funds available for the project and to take any other action necessary to carry out the project, and that the treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify any and all of the bonds under General Law, Chapter 44A, and to provide such information and execute such documents as such board may require for these purposes. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Motion to refer to a public hearing for August 9th by Councilman Mendoza, seconded by Councilor Caulfield.
Yeah.
Question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. $26,274,000. What I'm requesting through you to the manager, Mr. Manager, furnish the council with how much money has been spent at the water utility facility over the past 12 years. I can remember just a few years ago, we bonded $8 million to do something. So I want to know how much money has been spent and what for.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick, then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the same time, Mr. Manager, there's a memo in here from Mr. Moses referencing the need for a 35-cent rate increase. And if we could get some more information, 35 cents on what? What does that mean? And it's talking about in 2013, and a concern in here that's raised that has been a concern of the council, and we've run into some issues at different times as things tighten up of voting to borrow money but not paying for that money. Is there a recommendation that we take action at the same time, or do we have to put it off because it's a vote 2 years out, or what? If you could give some feedback whenever you're prepared.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had similar comments to the last two in that, I think, this is quite a bit of money to be spent. I know we've had presentations in the past about the need for improvements, but I think it would well serve us and the public to understand, what this particular funding is going to go for, where we are in the overall program of upgrades. And Councilor Caulfield said back, 10 or 12 years, but this program's been going on for a while. I know the last time we had a presentation to the council, I think it was brought to my attention that we had water mains in the city that were still made of wood.
That's right.
And so I know we need to do some things, but to see where this stands in the overall scheme of getting the facility truly modernized would be helpful information to have.
Thank you. Councilman Mendoza.
Yes, I am too. I'm concerned about the future effect on the city's finances. There was an indication here of what it would mean, but I'm looking forward to a presentation at the time of the public hearing that will explain more of the need for this work to be done by this loan order, and more specifics on exactly how the rates impacted. We had a significant increase recently. I'd like to minimize this. Also, if this involves any reduction in maintenance or any savings in that form, it would be good to know about that for the public hearing. So I appreciate that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? All those in favor of sending the loan order to a public hearing August 9th signify by saying aye. Opposed, it's a vote. Thank you. Moving on to reports. Do we have any subcommittee reports this evening? Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Tuesday, the zoning subcommittee met for the purpose of beginning discussions on changing the way the city deals with A&R, the A&R state law in its zoning, and what can be done to prevent the situation that happened over in Livingston Ave specifically, and in other areas. To his credit, Mr. Bakey and his department came up with what we thought was a very good solution. Maybe original, we're not sure, but either way, it sounded terrific, and hopefully they're going to come back with more information on it, or suggestions, specific suggestions. But essentially, it's not likely that we can completely prohibit development through the A&R process, and I think we've been told that. It's a state law, and the city can only look at the frontage on a lot, whether or not it's approved through an A&R. So what Mr. Bakey is suggesting is that we come up with as an approach to minimize, again, not eliminate, but minimize the impact, is to deal with two issues: the lack of public notice, and then the second issue is discretionary review. And essentially, what they're proposing, or what they proposed last week, is to have an A&R frontage number that would be increased from where we're at now. Essentially, use the number we have now as that would allow for a special permit, so that if it was 55 feet, you would have a special permit. You'd be allowed to apply for basically a subdivision, and you have to go through the special permit process, which would trigger this public notice and discretionary review, which is, I think, what the neighbors want and the residents want, because we're all neighbors. And in order to comply with the A&R code, the state code, we would also have a second frontage number, which is larger, obviously require more frontage, which would then fall under the approval not required part of the code. So we would have a number, and this is, DPD is going to run some numbers and see what, and play out some different scenarios to come back with specific suggestions, but essentially have an A&R frontage number and then a discretionary special permit number. And the difference is we do not have a special permit process currently for these types of developments, these A&R developments. It was pointed out that only about, I think it was 1.5% of the properties in the city, there's an opportunity to use these A&Rs. So it's not as prevalent as we maybe were concerned about, but however, it can have a great impact on neighborhoods. So this would allow people to still apply for an A&R where it was a number that, the frontage was a number that we thought was adequate as we revisit it, but also apply for a special permit and still consider the good development that's within the character of the neighborhoods, and this is we call infill. And I want to thank Mr. Bakey was at the meeting, Councilor Caulfield, Mr. Marshan, Councilor Martin, Councilor Elliott, Councilor Murphy, and I believe it was Aaron was sitting in the back. It was a very informative meeting, and I think a very creative solution to how we can maybe approach this A&R to minimize the impact. And we recessed and hopefully come back in 3 or 4 weeks with some specific recommendations from DPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councilor Broderick indicated, I did attend that meeting. It was an excellent meeting, and Assistant City Manager Adam Becky brought forward, I think, a plan that would help neighborhoods and people, and it would give a public hearing and more or less approval of the neighborhood to go forward with any plan that would impact their neighborhood. Increasing the frontage is very, very, very important. And if the frontage on Livingston Avenue was 65 feet, even 60 feet, that monstrosity, or I shouldn't say monstrosity, that garage that's being built there now wouldn't be there. And this is not pertaining to the subcommittee, but I do have a question, Mr. Mayor, for the manager. I have not received, whether you have received, from the building department, has there been half-inch tie-down bolts installed in that house to hold it down? I haven't heard anything pertaining to that.
Actually, we have the deputy DPD director here, Kendra Amaral. Kendra, do you happen to know that offhand, the half-inch tie-down bolts? Or I know that there was, the building permit was issued with a number of conditions that we'd sent out to the council.
We have not been out to inspect it yet. They received their building permit, I believe, a week ago, with the condition that they do install hook or tie-down bolts as part of the...
Half-inch tie-down bolts.
Yes, it's going to be compliant with code that does require that to address the strapping that they had put in that was not compliant. That's going to be part of the building, not the foundation. So that was agreed to and will be inspected when they get to their rough foundation, or their rough building inspection.
Mr. Manager, I watched them put the sill down. There was no tie-down bolts. I watched them put the walls up. There were no tie-down bolts. I want visual evidence that there's tie-down bolts on that building.
There will be.
We will be happy to provide that. We can take pictures of our inspection results.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the subcommittee report? Councilor Mendonça.
I know that it's just an idea at this point, and I would fully support increasing the frontage if that's the appropriate way to reduce unacceptable development. I am concerned about the part about the special permit, because although that may sound good right now, I'm afraid that down the road, it could be used that those people that are in the know or connected somehow get approval for special permits. Others don't even know to ask. And I think it could be put the city in a bad light in the future if used inappropriately, and I do believe ultimately it could be. So although I want to address the issue, and if increasing the frontage will do that, I'd support that. I'm not so enamored with the special permit part of the idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Martin to accept the report of the zoning subcommittee as a report of progress. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Any other subcommittee reports? Hearing none, moving on to general petitions. We have 3 claims this evening. Motion by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Elliott to refer the claims to the law department. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. We also have a miscellaneous petition from a Daniel Wazaluskas, 95 Boulevard Street, requests to abandon portion of Riverview Avenue. Refer to the city manager for report and recommendation by Councilor Caulfield, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Thank you. Moving on to the motion section. First motion of the evening by Councilor Elliott. Motion, City Council requests the city manager to report on the impact of the final municipal health insurance reform law adopted. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça.
Well, I filed the motion quite some time ago, and since that time, there's been quite a bit of reporting, on this issue, and we all agree that it was a good thing, and there's some progress being made. But if you could, I don't want to give you more work for another report, but if you just sum up for, I'm sure you could do it with your eyes closed, but, the financial benefits in the short and the long term, and what this means for the city. It's clearly not only a savings, but a management tool to address some of the major health insurance costs that we have. So, that's a motion.
Manager Lynch.
If I could, Councilor, we can get you a report, and but in a nutshell, it's important for me to be able to respond to this tonight to some extent. As you know, the state legislature and the governor have worked out a change in the law that gives more plan design powers to municipalities, and it's something that we've all been working for a number of years, and met roadblocks along the way. But we were successful this year, and it does provide, as you've indicated, an opportunity for us as a management tool and as an opportunity to save money for our municipalities and our taxpayers. And we see the savings out there as $2 to $3 million that could potentially be saved. Obviously, we have to go through all of the numbers and a lot of that still, even though it gives us plan design authority, it doesn't eliminate collective bargaining in its entirety. There's still bargaining that has to take place, and so that will need to occur. The one thing that does need to happen, though, is that the city council will have to approve or will have to accept this statute to allow us then to move forward as to utilize this tool that the state has now given us. And it's our intention to bring that vote into the city council on August 9th. That will then get us, we won't go right into negotiations. We'll use that then to start working out our plans. I met with the Insurance Advisory Committee today. I advised them that this was happening. We are up against some timelines, specifically in order to utilize the GIC. If that is an option that we decide to pursue, we have to have that completed by we have to be ready to make that commitment on December 1st. So we're really looking at August, September, October, November, looking at 4 months. We have to have a 30-day negotiation period somewhere in there with the unions. There is a process of going through the Insurance Advisory Committee for some type of feedback. So assuming this happens on the 9th, we need the regulations to come out from the state. They haven't been promulgated yet. So we'll need to review those and go through those and then make a proposal to the union. And I'd rather we not be at a 30-day. I'd rather we have 45, 60 days to be able to work with the unions and do it in a cooperative, collaborative way. But at some point, we need to be able to say, we've reached the end. We need to give you just the 30-day notice now before we move forward. And so it is our intention to bring that in on August 9th.
That's good news. And I think you really summed it up as best as we can. We're not eliminating collective bargaining. It's not going away. That wasn't the purpose. And I have to say, you know, yourself and the city council, we took a vote, at least it was a year ago, the prior session, sending down a home rule petition, I think getting out front and at least showing other communities this is what we need. We're all suffocating under these costs. And you brought it to the council's attention, and I think we responded and we're part and parcel to moving this thing forward. I'm sure there were many other individuals responsible, and of course had to get through the legislature, and the state delegation filed the home rule petition for us. But in our own way, I think that we were instrumental in moving this forward and getting some progress on this, knowing that there is still more progress that has to be done. But you've, as you mentioned, you met with the advisory committee already to let them know, what the process is, and we can move forward. So I think it's a good thing. I'm sure there'll be some anxiety between now and December in implementing this. But I think reaching out, to the unions and the insurance advisory committee is a very good step to implementing this. So thank you for the update, and I look forward to it.
Thank you. Council Martin, then Council Broderick. On the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the information, but if the timing is sensitive, I think there's a city council rule that when we're adopting state legislation, it requires it to be held for an additional meeting and can't be voted the same night. Now, maybe that rule can be waived. It's Rule 20 or 28, but I just, point that out as if that's of concern, that if action is needed next week, next meeting, then we need to know that.
Right. The rule, if I could, all general or special laws enacted by the House of Representatives and Senate in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which may be accepted or rejected by the City Council, shall be given a public hearing at least 1 week before the City Council votes to accept or reject such legislation. We hold a public hearing and then vote a week later.
So can we schedule this for a public hearing next meeting?
For August 9th, and then we would vote it at the meeting thereafter.
And then it would be voted the following meeting?
Right. Which would be 2 weeks unless we decide to have a special meeting.
Yeah, and right. It's
So we have to vote tonight to schedule that hearing?
Public hearing, yes. Which we,
Well, the motion's on the agenda, so,
Suspend the rules?
I mean, we just refer that
I
motion
don't-
to a public hearing on August 9th? Is that,
I would ask the solicitor's opinion, but
Yes, that could be done. We've done that in the past on certain issues where timing is important. There should be a vote tonight, though, to establish it in that form, so that, because it has to be advertised for a public hearing, and then a vote, as you say. There is a council rule that says that it sits in the clerk's office, but that can be waived.
Council Broderick, then Council Caulfield, and we'll go back to the
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
suspension.
To stay on this topic here about taking a vote tonight, it's not on the agenda. Do we have an issue with the new public meeting laws?
That's why I asked Assistant City Solicitor Fenton.
I know we have done it, but I don't know if this is something that may be challenged, and we're going to be negotiating, and later on it may be something that needs to be implemented and used. I'd suggest that we make sure we get it right. 2 weeks, you can still talk to negotiate and talk and keep things moving. But my concern is if we stumble here or jump here, that if the open meeting law now, we're not allowed to, we're not letting each other bring motions in
Right.
that weren't on the agenda. I suggest we may have an issue with voting to send something to a public hearing.
Counsel, you make a good point with respect to the revised open meeting law. It might be the better course of judgment to bring in a vote at the next meeting and then establish a hearing, unless there's some real dire need that we vote on it, that you vote on August the 9th for some scheduling collective bargaining meetings or something, then that would be the better approach, so that you don't run into the problem that you suggest, namely that we might receive a challenge down the road.
Council Caulfield?
I wholeheartedly agree with Councilor Broderick. If I could bring up a burning house last week, you certainly can't bring this up. And we got to play by the rules.
Point taken. So I'm sure the manager will have something on the agenda for August 9th.
We will do that. We'll have to sort of play around with the schedule a little bit for some of that, how we do that, but we will do that.
Is there a timing issue?
The only time, again, the timing is we need to adopt this and get something to the Insurance Advisory Committee so we can.
So you really can't move without this.
We can start formulating our strategy ahead of that, certainly, of our proposal, and then we can, once we get the acceptance, then we can submit it to them. So, again, I don't want to drag it, one of the requests of one of the members of the Insurance Advisory Committee today was to wait until September to bring this up to the City Council. And of course, that would, if we were in the same situation as we are now, that we would be pushing it out into October. So it's good that I'm glad that we talked about this tonight and we got that out on the table. That's one of those details that we need to make sure we have. So long as we can present it, I would say so long as we can present a proposal to them by the middle of September, that gives us all the rest of September, October, and into November, or even the beginning of November, to say, this is the 30 days, and now and we'll work with the law department on that. So there is an issue with my attendance at the meeting because I was going to be away at the last meeting in August. So we'll work around that.
Thank you. Council Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if maybe we could do a special meeting or something if it works, trying to figure out, it looks like we're going to need 5 weeks to get this done, right? A meeting to vote it to go to a public hearing, there's 2 weeks out, and then...
I'm sure we can work. I'm sure we'll be able to work around the schedule of this.
And my original point before this came up, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager, was to say thank you for getting people together, and please continue to do so. The worst thing for me and probably the rest of us here sitting here to hear is that people didn't know.
Right.
There was no communication, and that doesn't seem like it's a case here, and I hope you continue to do that, and I thank you for doing that. We can agree to disagree on what should happen, but the fair thing is for people to have the information. What they do with it and how they interpret it is always going to be maybe a little bit different, but I commend you for getting together with the Insurance Advisory Committee and ask you to continue to do so. Thank you.
Council Caulfield?
Just for clarification, is time of the essence here?
Well, it's of the essence in terms of the way the legislation reads is that there's a 30-day window for negotiations. Now that's left up to management. I think we could extend that a little bit, but ultimately, at some point, we're going to have to say potentially to the collective bargaining groups, here's your 30 days. We've got to make a decision by this date, because if we reach an impasse, if we cannot come to an agreement, then the city management, city administration can implement whatever our proposal is, and that's what goes into effect. And then there's an outside 3-person panel that then decides how much money is at stake that has to be shared with the employees. I would rather be able to work with the unions to bargain through all of this, and that might take a little bit more than 30 days. It might take 45. It might take 60. I'd rather everyone's in agreement.
That we're not up against a wall.
We're not up against the wall at this point.
Because the reason I brought this up, Mr. Mayor, is...
The more time, the better.
If time was an essence, it should have been on the agenda tonight, or the last meeting.
Well, it wasn't, I don't think it was signed into law at the last meeting, so, and we just met with the Insurance Advisory Committee today and told them, it's again, it's a balancing. We're not, believe me, Counselor, if it were up against the wall that much, this would have been, I would have asked for a special meeting of the City Council. There's plenty of time here, but I don't want to wait too long before the
So
council...
be on the agenda
puts
for
this
the
up.
next meeting?
We'll put it on a public hearing at the next meeting. It will either be taken up at the 23rd or the first meeting in September. We have time.
Okay.
Any further discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Councilor Caulfield. Motion, City Council requests the city manager of the property inspectional department's report on the status of the burned property located at 350 to 352 Wilder Street. Seconded by Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The building is a great old Victorian home, and at one time it was probably the talk of the neighborhood. And I was called by the neighbors to come up and look at the house and talk with them, and it appears that there was arson involved, and the second floor of this building is owned by a bank, and the bottom floor was rented out. And it was very visible to see where the rear porch was just scorched, burnt out. And they neglected to turn off the water, and the basement got flooded. The neighbor next door got all that water, et cetera. It's been a year, exactly a year, and something has to be done with the building. I think the building could be saved, it could be refurbished, it could be turned back into a beautiful structure. But as long as it sits there, it's just gonna deteriorate, and the reason I filed this motion, to see if we can get some input from the city, get some information, contact the owners, what's their plans, and so forth, so.
Mr. Manager?
Again, I know that I ventured into Councilor Armin Mercer used to tell me I didn't need to do this, and he actually recommended I not do this in terms of responding to motions of the night they're submitted. But just so that there's clarification on this, this property has been cited for violations by Inspectional Services, and it's also on our list, our receivership list, that we're prepared to move into court to take this property, put this under receivership.
Okay. Did the abutters know about this? Could you just give them some information that the city is working on this?
We certainly can.
It'd be nice if a leaflet, make the leaflets and I'll hand them out, but they should know that we're working on this issue.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to the vote. Next motion by Councilor Caulfield. Motion, City Council requests the city manager that when trash is left out longer than 1 week, the trash be removed by the city and the cost of such be forwarded to the landlord or owner. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spent probably 3/4 of a tank of gas, toured the city. I think there were 4 or 5 different neighborhoods. Identified the trash, identified the location, and there's 48 locations, Mr. Manager, 48. And I'll give you a copy of this, you can have it. The Acre, Lower Belvedere, back Central Street, it's not that bad, but there were some violations. Centerville, the Lower Highlands, Mr. Manager, is a dumping ground. An absolute disgrace. The couch that was on Gate Street a month and a half ago, it's still there. It's still there. And Plain and Foundry Street. I went by there yesterday. And I know what's causing that, Mr. Mayor. I know exactly what's causing it. This is a storage area in that vicinity. The largest television set I have ever seen. It would dwarf that there in height. And to decorate that one, they put 5 little small ones around it. And if you get sick of looking at that, there's a bed you can lay down in. And I asked for a camera. If you install a camera, you could catch those people who are doing that. But it hurts me that the city is becoming a doormat for anybody who wants to dump things. And at the corner of Lincoln Street and Gorham Street, they did remove the leather couch, they did remove the door, they did remove the lumber, they did remove all the debris. And they moved it into the little side yard, and everything is covering and the electrical panels of the building. So, Mr. Manager, without belaboring this issue, I'm going to give you this list, the addresses. Going to make it very easy for you. The DPW could pick this up, all of it, in a day and a half. I know the Lowell Folk Festival will be here. I'll be here enjoying it, and I know downtown will be shining. But the people on Liberty Street, Smith Street is a disaster, a total disaster. Those people want to see their neighborhood clean too. So I'm not going to belabor the issue, and I'm going to make it relatively easy on the inspectional services because here's all the addresses you need, okay?
Thank you. Council Broderick?
Through you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Manager, if we are going to hire anyone in the inspectional services, I think we know who we can call here. Councilor Caulfield, after he retires, I saw his list there. It is detailed, and this is, I think that this is a problem that's obviously been an ongoing issue. We've changed some of the trash collection. You know, I don't know how you can quantify whether it's worse or better. It's, you know, it's a city, and this is an issue. I think this is, it's a good idea that we remove it. I don't know. I know we've talked about putting cameras up in the past in a way to try and, you know, in areas, I think over by the Rotary over in Centerville, First Street was always a dumping ground in other areas. So perhaps I think this would be a good opportunity to maybe some outreach into the neighborhoods. I mean, all kidding around aside, that list is very good, and maybe we can reach out to the Lower Highlands neighborhood and find out, can they have a neighborhood meeting and talk to some folks on Smith Street. The difficulty is it takes about 30 seconds or maybe a minute and 30 seconds, depending on how big the TV is, to drop it off out of your car or your truck and drive away. So to catch someone in the act, short of having cameras up at all of these areas or rotating them, is going to be difficult. But people that live in these neighborhoods, I think are going to be, as usual, the eyes and ears, and maybe can help us identify where this trash is coming from. Is it tenants that are throwing out illegal things, or is it, in the past, landlords, when it was free, we had this issue where landlords were coming in and dumping things from their residents outside the city to where they had rental property, whether it was mattresses, couches, everything that was picked up for free. It is a serious issue, and I do think that, I know we have some program, some plan or some way of addressing this, and maybe you can speak to it, but I think it's a good motion in terms of bringing attention to, you know, a way to solve this, and maybe I think that it's got to be engaging more in the neighborhoods to get some eyes and ears on this thing. Thank you.
Manager Lynch?
We do have a protocol that's, and unfortunately, as you point out, Councilor Broderick, this has been an ongoing issue, and I think I gave information to the council some time ago. I don't know if it was picked up in the newspaper, that the number of citations that we've issued have actually gone up for you know, dumping violations over the last I think 4 months. Councilor Caulfield, just a question on some of these. It's a great list. This is very helpful to us, and I thank you very much. These are on public property, Or the one that I'm particularly interested in is the Lincoln and Gorham, that it's blocking the electrical.
That's on private property, but I would have to say, Mr. Manager, there is a safety issue there because the electrical panels are being blocked.
Yeah, the issue that I think we have to be a little more cautious on, when they're on
I understand that.
when they're on public property, we can send the DPW out and they can take it. When it's on private property, it becomes a little bit more problematic to go out and take it off of private property.
95% of that, Mr. Manager, is on the City of Lowell sidewalk.
Thank you.
Or it's blocking a driveway, or it's a nuisance. And Council Broderick, you mentioned the fact that the TV, I'm going to tell you, it had to take 3 men to put it on the truck, and at least 3 men to take it off. That's how big it is. And I think it was done as a joke. It's some artwork that's there. And it's not fair to the person that owns that property. You know,
That's right.
And I'll talk to you after the meeting, Mr. Manager, and I'll tell you, I think I know where that's coming from.
Okay, great, thank you, Council.
Councilman Danza?
Thank you.
Some of the concerns that I have been touched on, certainly we want these items removed. We don't want them sitting around our city streets. I am concerned about dumping, that if someone from another property dumps something and then we charge the owner who had nothing to do with it being put there, I could see that being an issue. I also see that this is a bigger problem than just picking up these items one time, because as soon as we're done picking them up, we could create another list of properties that have items dumped on. I'm just wondering if it would be advantageous to us to have some report from the manager or some analysis of how we could deal with this long term. What can the city do? I know for one thing we should make it punitive in the cases where people are dumping and we find them. So maybe we need to look at our penalty structure for this kind of violation to see if it needs to be adjusted so it truly does penalize those that are doing the dumping. If my colleagues would like, I was thinking of having that referred to the Neighborhood Traffic Recycling Utilities. I think that's the closest subcommittee. It is chaired by Councilor Caulfield, so that when we could come up with a more permanent solution for how to deal with this problem in a way that will greatly reduce the occurrence of dumping in the city. So I'll make a motion to refer the issue.
By Councilman Danza, seconded by Council Broderick, to refer the motion to the neighborhood subcommittee.
Yeah, it's Traffic Recycling Utilities
right.
Subcommittee.
Okay, all those in favor of referring the motion to the
Mayor,
subcommittee?
could I speak on that motion? I don't object to the motion, but I also know that we do have a solid waste advisory, don't we? Advisory
Yeah,
committee or
it was
commission?
folded into the neighborhood.
Oh, it was. I mean, what is the committee that Gunther?
We have an environmental subcommittee now, but
Subcommittee.
we have the solid waste was folded in into the neighborhood subcommittee, I believe,
Okay.
2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. I agree. I think it's a longer-term solution, and when we adopted this new trash collection policy, I think this was one of the biggest concerns: mattresses, couches, things of that nature that people routinely would just put out and we would pick up. I think the good news, and maybe you can include this as part of your report, how many law-abiding citizens, how many people do pay to have the mattresses and the couches, et cetera, picked up. And unfortunately, there's quite a few people, and it might be becoming more a recurring problem. I think it is, that we come up with a long-term solution. Do we have a day that people can go, similar to hazardous waste disposal day, 1 day a year, 2 days a year, rather than 2 days a year or something of that nature, where they know that they can go and pay the fee, $5, $10 to dispose of it otherwise. And maybe these people won't go. Maybe it's just people are going to dump their mattresses. Couches, they seem to be a recurring problem that people are not accustomed to doing it. But it costs city resources to go out, pick it up, and then the tipping fees in addition to that. So it is a problem, and I agree with comments made by Councilor Broderick and Councilor Mendoza that we got to come up with a long-term solution rather than sending DPW out every so many months to pick up this stuff. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
No, I agree completely, and I think that I know that I have in front of me here some procedures that have been put in place back in June by Inspectional Services Division of DPD to deal with some of these issues, and we'll certainly get in as a report to the council in response to this motion. We'll get copies of this out, and I do think that we have to find some long-term options here for us to solve the problem.
All those in favor of referring it to the Neighborhood Subcommittee signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just briefly, I've noticed a trend in some neighborhoods. And when we had that inspector out there constantly, the lids were closed, everything looked neat and clean, and everything was in order. But since we haven't had that inspector, the lids are now halfway open, the trash is bulging out in some neighborhoods. We've lost something and I agree with Councilor Mendonça. You have to come up with a long-term solution. And what we have out there now is we just can't leave it out there. You just can't. This city is better than that. And if we have people coming into the folk festival, I remember walking down Central Street from people from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Texas, Mexico. What if they decide to take a tour of the city? Not just downtown. Bridge Street, Mammoth Road, Varnum Avenue. It's out there. So, Mr. Manager, and I want to thank my colleagues for the support that I brought this forward, and it's something that has to be addressed. It just cannot continue. Thank you.
Thank you. The last motion of the evening is actually by Councilor Murphy and co-authored by Councilor Broderick, so I will still need a second since Councilor Murphy's not here. Motion, City Council requests the City Manager prepare a report of progress on strategic goals and objectives for annual performance evaluation pursuant to the City Manager's contract. Second by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're stuck with me because Patrick's not here. Essentially, I know in the contract that it calls for an evaluation, I think, August 1st, and setting up strategic goals and objectives within 30 days, or 30 days thereafter. I think we accomplished or finalized the strategic goals and objectives last December, so I'm sure I know it seemed to me as a little bit premature, or it's like, wow, is this here again already? But I think, first of all, we have to be in comply with your contract, and if I don't think we'll get an evaluation done by August 1st, Mr. Manager, but if you could let us know that it's okay to, and let us know, and maybe by way of a report or some type of memo that, you were sent to continuing out the evaluation, and let us know what you think as far as goals and objectives, but also, accomplishments, where we're at. Again, it's only 8 months, but where we're at with those goals and objectives that we set last year. As a way of getting the process consistent for upcoming years.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
I do have some thoughts on that. I do think that the time frame that we set up to do the goals and objectives, a strategic plan, tie in, the time frame of getting it done in December, that fall period to do that is a nice timing, because then it sort of gears us towards the preparation of the budget, and so that all works well in terms of the council calendar and the administration's calendar. So I certainly have no objection to extending this out, and I'll put that in the form of a memo to the council with some ideas on this and moving forward, and looking at it in the broader perspective of the strategic plan of the city, of the city council and the city administration each year, because I do think that's the way we should be operating.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Before you adjourn, there's a gentleman here from National Grid, and I guess it's not on the agenda, but I don't know what, I went and asked him what he was doing here. He's from National Grid, so.
Thank you. David Boucher, Senior Design Tech from National Grid. Here in a petition that I was told to show up for Columbia Street.
It's actually not on our
Not on the agenda. I just noticed that now. I didn't know the agendas were over there.
Should we suspend? Maybe it was an oversight, or?
I'm sorry?
And there has been I'd make a motion can we suspend the rules and entertain the
Yeah.
second and refer it to the appropriate
wire
office?
inspector? Motion to
Save Mr.
suspend the
Boucher
rules
a
by
trip
Counsel
back.
Martin, seconded by Counsel Caulfield. All those in favor of suspending the rules for the purpose of, you asked to be here for a hearing or just?
Yes, petition for the hearing. Basically, what we're doing is asking to install 2 conduits on pole 2, Columbia Street, and going underground approximately 20 feet. We've provided a sketch. Obviously, you don't have any. I mean, I can pass it around. Yeah, it was submitted, and we were told that this would be the date. Perhaps it was for next month, I don't know.
Counsel Martin?
Is that the only thing you have? Is there another letter or something that goes with it?
There's a cover page there, too.
This is up in the Middlesex Village neighborhood.
Counsel Elliott?
Through you, the clerk, any record of petition coming in? I know you've only been there a couple of...
I'll have to check.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'd suggest we accept it in and
Refer it to the
refer
wire.
it to the manager for appropriate action, and if there's a need for National Grid to reappear, that we notify them.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Counsel Martin to accept it, seconded by Counsel Elliott. And if there's further action required, we'll be notified as such by the city manager's office. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Counsel Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any sense of urgency to this, sir?
Not that I know of. It's just going through the regular procedure. I mean, if it does get delayed for 2 weeks, we'll deal with it. I mean,
If it's, I know we just took a motion up, but if it's not anything urgent, it might make sense to stay with the rules and kick it out for 2 weeks. I don't know what's out there in terms of if any neighbors are going to want to see, I don't know. I have a little concern about jumping in.
All we're doing is...
Referring it to the manager.
He could file it in the clerk's office downstairs or file it here, right? I mean,
Okay.
Again, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed to vote. I apologize, sir. Any other action to come before the council? Motion to adjourn by Councilman Dodson, seconded by Council Elliott. All those in favor? Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend at the Folk Festival, everybody.
Mr. Mayor, before you adjourn, are we going to have a flag raising ceremony for the authenticity of the city, and what time will that take place?
Down at Boarding House Park at 6:40.
Oh, not out here in
No,
City
it's going to
Hall?
be down at all the flags are going to be at Boarding House Park.
Oh, because we raised all the flags out here.
There was a memo on our desk.
Pardon me?
I think we got a memo on our desk.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be down at Boarding House Park.